The Simpsons have eerily predicted the future on more than one occasion. From Donald Trump becoming president of the United States, the discovery of the Higgs boson particle, to the three-eyed fish, and so many more, The Simpsons really do seem to have a crystal ball hidden in their writer's room. But what about some of the predictions they've made that haven't happened? Is it possible they could still come true any day now? And if so, could they have an even bigger impact on the upcoming American election? Check out the rest of the video for all of the spooky things that The Simpsons have predicted that just might come true, and soon.
Hey, I got a B-mail too!
Don't open it, homie. It's a virus.
Too late.
All the way back in 2001, The Simpsons aired an episode called New Kids on the Blech. It's a classic Simpsons favorite for anyone who's a fan of the show, and featured a story about Bart, Milhouse, Ralph, and Nelson being formed into an overnight sensation boy band called the Party Posse. The episode aired at the height of the late 90s, early 2000s boy band craze, in which NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys ruled the pop music scene. While it started off innocently enough, later on in the episode, the group dropped their first single titled Drop Da Bomb. In it is the mysterious lyric, Ivan et Niage, which Lisa figures out is actually the phrase join the Navy spelled backwards. It turns out that the record label is using this subliminal messaging to try to get kids to enroll in the Navy. Now, this isn't a totally new idea, as the underrated gem Josie and the Pussycats movie would have a similar plot and was released in the same year. But some think that this isn't just the work of fiction, and that we could be living in a world in which there are subliminal messages hidden in our music, movies, and TV. For a long time, the idea of a robot doctor was something straight out of a sci-fi movie, and, in this case, a Simpsons episode. In 2011, we got a glimpse of the Simpsons' idea of modern medicine in the episode Holidays of Future Past, when a very pregnant Maggie is visited by a robot doctor. And while that seemed far-fetched at the time, these days, the idea of an entirely virtual doctor visit doesn't sound so bad. Sure, we're not quite there yet, but with robotics helping out in surgery and doctor visits taking place more and more over Zoom, it's really just a matter of time. Mars. Since human beings began strapping themselves into metal tubes and being shot out into space, there has been talk of colonizing the Red Planet. And in 2016, The Simpsons explored just what it could mean to sign up for an expedition to Mars in the episode The Martian Chronicles. In the episode, a company named Exploration Incorporated is planning the first manned mission to Mars, set to take place in 2026, and Lisa signs herself up to go. Unfortunately, things get pushed forward, and suddenly the launch date is at the end of that same week. While 2026 might seem really soon, in reality, the first mission could be a whole lot sooner, like in 2 years. Elon Musk and his team are actually preparing to send human beings to Mars in 2022. So, while The Simpsons may not have predicted a mission to Mars in general, they weren't far off with the date. We've all known since day one that Lisa Simpson was going to grow into one of the brightest minds of her generation. She's always excelled in school, won all kinds of awards, is a musical prodigy, is the future president of the United States, and has invented more things by the age of 8 than we will probably ever do in a lifetime. Sure, she's fictional, but hey, it's still very impressive. In the 8th episode of season 27, Lisa invents something that environmentalists and car aficionados all around the world have been dreaming about for years: a solar-powered car. She uses this amazing invention to compete in the Springfield Alternative Energy Derby and is just about to cross the finish line first when the famous Duff blimp crosses in front of the sun and grinds her car to a halt with inches to spare. While some think this was just a funny moment, others wonder if The Simpsons were trying to make a bigger statement about corporations deliberately getting in the way of environmental technological advancements. Sure, it could just be a good joke, but knowing The Simpsons, there's probably more going on than it seems. The Simpsons has toyed with the idea that robots could take over our lives in more ways than one, and we will come back to that premise one more time later on in the video. They definitely aren't the only TV show or movie to introduce the idea, as robot supremacy has been a popular subject in the science fiction genre since it began. And yet, all the way back in 1994, The Simpsons aired an episode called Itchy and Scratchy Land that imagined a world in which one moment could set off some seemingly innocent robots and turn them into man-hunting machines. When the Simpson family visits the Itchy and Scratchy theme park, they're surrounded by hundreds of mechanical versions of the characters, even though they are assured by the park employees that the characters are only programmed to attack each other and not the guests. It's only a matter of time before things go completely haywire. And according to Jürgen Schmidhuber, a man known by many as the father of artificial intelligence, this moment might not be all that far off in real life. In fact, he predicts that we could see AI advancing past human control by the year 2030. In the year 2000, the future was on everyone's mind. It might seem funny to think back on it now, but people were genuinely terrified that the world was going to explode because of a phenomenon known as Y2K. Of course, it didn't, and the clocks just kept on ticking the way they always have. In that same year, The Simpsons aired the 17th episode of their 11th season with a story all about our possible futures. It was called Bart to the Future, and it took place in an imagined timeline in the year 2030. In that year, Lisa Simpson was the president of the United States, and Bart was a college dropout still waiting for his band to make it big. Funnily enough, this is the episode credited for predicting the Trump presidency.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
And that wasn't the only futuristic idea that the writers of this episode imagined could become a thing. The other big, and while we might be 10 years away from sucking virtual fudge through a tube, there are already studies going on about how eating while connected to the VR headset might change the way our food tastes. So, watch out for VR food in the not-so-distant future. The Simpsons have long been known for their awesomely frightening Halloween special episodes. But in the 2016 Halloween episode, one tiny sight gag might have just been the spookiest joke of all. We see the family all dressed up in their Halloween costumes and out trick-or-treating, with Homer dressed as Bender from Futurama, in an awesome crossover joke that fans loved. In a blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment, Homer opens the front of his costume to reveal that he has an Ivanka 2028 sticker displayed, meaning that in the year 2028, Ivanka Trump will be running for president.
This is some scary shit!
While this idea might not scare everyone, the strangest thing about it was that the episode aired before Trump had claimed the presidency. We still have 8 years or so to find out if this prediction will come true, but the fact that they've foreseen so many other accurate historical moments really makes us wonder if this one could turn out to be true after all. Well, we said earlier on that we'd be coming back to the world of artificial intelligence, and here we are. Another classic favorite Simpsons moment is definitely the segment from the Season 13 Halloween special episode, Ultra House 3000. In it, we find out that Homer has taken it upon himself to upgrade the Simpson home to a fancy and entirely automated smart home called the Ultra House 3000, voiced by none other than Pierce Brosnan. At first, things seem to be going well with the Ultra House, until it develops a fixation on Marge and sets out trying to get rid of Homer in order to have her all to itself. Even though most of us decided in that moment to never allow a robot to control our homes after we saw just how badly it went for the Simpson family, there is more smart home technology out there on the market than ever before. From Alexa to Google Home to everything in between, we seem to be moving closer and closer to the reality of the Ultra House 3000. When The Simpsons announced in 2006 that they'd be making their first ever feature-length film, audiences everywhere were excited and a little skeptical. But lucky for us, it turned out to be a pretty great movie. The whole story starts off in classic Simpsons fashion when Homer goes against the rules and dumps his trash into the town lake that had finally just been cleaned. As a result, the Environmental Protection Agency shuts down all traffic in and out of Springfield and encloses the entire town in a giant dome in order to stop them from polluting anywhere else. Now, in a time in which we are no strangers to being quarantined, this whole plot actually feels pretty accurate, even if it's extreme. And some believe that this kind of large-scale environmental disaster is no longer the stuff of cartoons. And while dropping a dome on an entire town might not be the answer to any environmental problems, there is tons of talk about just how serious our pollution problem is. If only we lived in a world in which Homer Simpson could come and save the day. After he wrecked it first, of course. It makes sense that the episode in which we get to see the Simpson family transported to the year 2030 would contain a ton of predictions about what the future could look like, especially since it was made in the year 2000. We've already talked about the virtual reality food from that episode, and of course the prediction of Trump's time in office, but there is one more gag that, while it hasn't come true yet, could still be in our future. While you might think we're talking about the phrase smell you later taking over as the new form of saying goodbye,
I can't believe smell you later replaced goodbye.
we're actually talking about the very cool hologram telephone that made its debut in that episode. We have seen hologram technology make all kinds of leaps and bounds in recent years, from having Tupac appear on stage again to 3-sided display cases that you can purchase at Best Buy, but they haven't quite made it into the pockets of everyday people quite yet. And yet, in this world in which it's a little bit hard to gather with friends inside your home these days, having someone pop up in glorious 3D via hologram might actually be just what we need.
Smell you later!
Smell you later.
Will I get beat up today? All signs point to yes.
That ball knows everything.
The Simpsons has the uncanny ability to predict the future. Or we all can twist and change small moments and gags to make it seem like they do. Either way, we've heard the show predict Trump would be president and that Disney would buy 20th Century Fox.
Wow, the future is here!
So what's next? With 30 plus seasons of content, there are things that are bound to come true in 2020, including some major sports predictions, future technology, and possibly another presidential prediction. Now it's time to predict what The Simpsons already predicted that will most definitely come true. Make sense? Sure!
Brilliant. I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Let's kick things off with one of the first 2020 predictions that became a reality. The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl.
What?
Let's flash back to the season 10 episode Sunday Cruddy Sunday. In the story, Homer and the gang attend the Super Bowl in Miami, where an unnamed team in red wins the Super Bowl. Flash forward to the first week in February of 2020 and boom, there we have it. The key to this prediction comes in two forms. First was the jersey the Chiefs wore for the game. They could have easily been in white, but their home team status ensured they were in red. Secondly, the Super Bowl location. Miami is often a hotspot for Super Bowl games, but the big game has been played all over the country, including Dallas and New Orleans. The player numbers featured in the locker room scene also match up many of the players on the active Chiefs roster. One number that stood out? Number 21, which represents Bashaud Breeland, the cornerback who notched up 7 tackles and an interception in the big game. The prediction is just one of the many sports-based ones the show has featured over the years. In the spirit of the age-old question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, we have to ask, do inventors come up with their own ideas, or do they actually base some ideas off the Simpsons' creative minds? One piece of technology we could see becoming mainstream? Hologram mail. The episode of Bart to the Future not only featured the infamous Donald Trump prediction, but there's also a small moment where Bart receives a hologram message in the mail. FaceTime and AR technology have already become impressive mainstays in the digital industry, but we are on the forefront of hologram technology as well. Products like the Real Fiction HD3 display showcase hologram-like technology, and while it's marketed towards businesses, you could own one for your home. Soon, the visuals will integrate to feature live recordings, and FaceTime will become hologram time. Once we all start getting these, how much do you bet a majority of the first message we record will be, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope"? We're guessing around 80%. Sticking with the episode Bart to the Future, we have another fun moment featuring Marge and Homer enjoying dinner together. But Marge didn't spend hours preparing a perfect meal. Her and Homie simply suck some tubes in their mouths as they enjoy VR food. So far, half of this scene has become reality. VR sets are everywhere now, from PlayStation kits to mall displays. You cannot escape the growing trend of VR technology. So what about piping food into our mouths? Well, we are close to making this a reality. In an art exhibit with a restaurant theme, patrons wore VR headsets as they went on a food journey experience and indulged in food they didn't even know they were eating. Hosted at the James Beard House in New York City, the visuals in the headsets showcased a blend of food imagery and visual worlds. Patrons would get handed the food items and eat them, not knowing exactly what they had until they read a menu card after the whole experience was complete. Sound preposterous?
Absolutely.
Could we be chomping on McDonald's fries while we wear a headset that showcases the Hamburglar on the run in a digital world? Sounds about right. Just like the trend of completely dark restaurants, the VR dining experience is only destined to grow, and so will all those headlines about The Simpsons predicting the future. More recently, we've all fallen for the clickbait where people claims that The Simpsons predicted the coronavirus outbreak. Well, that simply wasn't true. Screenshots were mixed from an episode featuring a fictional Osaka flu and a photoshopped image of a Kent Brockman news broadcast. With so many worldwide health pandemics, the prediction could literally apply to any major outbreak. While the show didn't predict the coronavirus, there are some major medical advancements that are getting closer and closer to becoming a reality. In the season 23 episode Holidays of Future Past, we see a pregnant Maggie get treated by an advanced medbot who performs an ultrasound and gives advice. Since the episode aired, we've seen surgery robots, diagnostic robots, and medical robots who can fill prescriptions. And now, advancements will help the treatment of pregnant women. There's one doctor in Japan who is developing a medical robot to conduct ultrasounds in remote locations, so no hospitals are needed. Once the robots get unleashed, it could change the way women are treated while pregnant and help serve people all over the globe. 2020 is a major election year, and this year's election could give us a major glimpse into the future. Seeing how The Simpsons already predicted Donald Trump's presidential run, we have to imagine they wanted to take another shot in the dark. Well, in 2016, the Treehouse of Horror special featured the Simpsons family shopping for a Christmas tree on Halloween night. Homer was dressed like a robot from the future. He peels back a panel to reveal a political button that reads Ivanka 2028. While we know Ivanka won't be running for president in 2020, we could see the seeds get set for a run in the future. And it all depends on how the election goes in November. Donald Trump loses, he could set up one of his children for a run in the future. Donald Trump wins, he could want to continue his legacy a few terms after he leaves office. We're not here to get political, but The Simpsons could be right on with the timing. And we could have a political showdown that pits Kanye West against Ivanka Trump. Ay caramba! Way back in 2005, we got another glimpse into The Simpsons' future with the episode Future Drama. Many people love to reference the hover cars in the story, but we're focused on Homer and Marge's relationship. In the episode, the couple separated because Homer invested all of their savings on an underwater home. While the idea seemed preposterous back then, Homer's investment may have actually paid off. Underwater homes are slowly becoming the newest vacation destination, and by the end of 2020, we'll see them everywhere, from tropical destinations to popular tourist spots like Dubai. Multiple companies in Japan have been working on a concept known as the ocean spiral. The design is meant to house hundreds of people and provide sustainable living using the ocean's energy and wildlife. So yeah, the next time you find yourself staying in an underwater hotel or putting a down payment on an Atlantic Ocean oasis, you have Homer Simpson to thank.
I'm a genius.
It seems like every year, more and more companies are merging together. We have a giant world of Disney incorporating 20th Century Fox, Marvel, Star Wars, Muppets, ABC, and ESPN. Then there's CBS and Viacom with the Paramount Network, MTV, and Nickelodeon. Only time will tell, but The Simpsons are already on the right track. In the flash-forward episode Lisa's Wedding, we saw a news report by Kent Brockman, who was reporting for CNN-BCBS, which was a merger between CNN, NBC, and CBS. While NBC and CBS will remain separate for the foreseeable future, some streaming giants could acquire companies pretty soon. Rumors have circulated about Lionsgate being sold to a bigger company, and set-up streaming services like Apple and Roku may acquire their own companies as well. The major players will only grow and gobble up a bunch of TV channels in the process. Get ready for AMC to become AMC Netflix or HGTV to become Hulu GTV. As Disney settles down with their massive Fox purchase, other companies will look to expand their foothold, and 2020 is the year it could happen. We all remember and love the classic Simpsons episode Deep Space Homer. But this wasn't the only time the Simpsons went to outer space. In the season 27 episode The Margian Chronicles, Lisa signs up for a one-woman expedition to Mars as a company plans to colonize the planet. When Marge becomes upset at Lisa's decision, she decides to go along for the ride, only to have the trip delayed all the way to 2051 when we show Marge and Lisa actually living on the planet. So, when will we start seeing memes of Lisa and Marge on Mars with confirmation of The Simpsons' great prediction? Pretty soon, actually. Elon Musk's SpaceX program has some major plans for the future. It starts with a cargo trip to Mars in 2020, then a citizen-based trip around the moon in 2023. This will be followed with a human mission to Mars in 2024, the first of its kind, if it all goes to plan anyway. If the Mars test goes well, it could only be a matter of time before astronauts start spending extended amounts of time on the planet. For every advancement in clean green energy, it seems like there's some type of company trying to shut things down. The frustrating barriers were portrayed perfectly on The Simpsons in the episode Paths of Glory. When Lisa enters an alternative energy derby, her solar-powered car is unable to finish the race due to a Duff beer blimp blocking out the sun. Well, 2020 is the year of major advancements, and major hurdles companies must go through to get mainstream. Yep, many future technologies will feel the same metaphorical shadow of a Duff blimp just like Lisa felt. Environmental rules and regulations have been stomped on and changed by Donald Trump's term in office with nearly 100 major changes so far. 2020 will definitely cross the 100 mark, especially as Republicans look to bolster their campaigns with help from major oil companies. At least car companies continue to move forward, with electric versions like the Porsche Taycan, Hyundai Nexo, and Jaguar I-Pace. The more these companies thrive for clean energy solutions, the more we can move away from the green energy shadows blocking our future. There have been multiple times on The Simpsons where we've seen robots taking over. One of the earliest was the season 6 episode Itchy and Scratchy Land. The animatronic robots went haywire, causing massive destruction.
Ah! My hair! You chopped off my hair! Oh God, I'm ugly!
Then there's also the 2013 episode Them Robot, where Mr. Burns hires robots to take over the nuclear plant. Well, in 2020, we will see the advancements of robots, along with some potential problems. One of the first indicators? The Disney World Avengers Campus. Previews have showcased an animatronic Spider-Man flying high over guests and performing multiple mid-air moves. Well, it's only a matter of time before the thing goes haywire and lands on the guests below. Companies like Amazon are relying on AI tech even more than before, with major plans for expansion in 2020. Just like the nuclear plant's robots, we could see some major glitches or errors. Imagine ordering a new pair of shoes only to get a pair of oven mitts in the mail. Dang you, tricky robots!
It used to be cool.
We are the same temperature we have always been.
The key to preventing the robot revolt is preventing hackers from taking control rather than the robots themselves. Good luck. We're watching you, Roomba. Now back to the charging cradle.
While the events of 2020 may have seemed impossible to predict, typically there is one iconic, clairvoyant animated show that managed to get things scarily accurate. 2020. Need I say more? While this year may have felt like a decade, we are only just over halfway through. There seems to have been enough craziness to last a lifetime, and for the most part, this year has been impossible to predict, with a lot of us having to put our plans on hold indefinitely. I guess I'll never go to Disney World. Not only are our plans on hold, but so are film and TV studios with the likes of Tenet and No Time to Die on indefinite hold. But there seems to have been one show that knew everything was coming all along. By now, we all know that the writers of The Simpsons are a bunch of mystics, eerily getting seemingly hundreds of things right over its long run. But some of the things that have been featured on the show feel oddly specific to 2020. While these are usually just jokes or asides, they are all the way too real now. In this video, we'll be looking at some of the scariest predictions The Simpsons made, including global pandemics, video game hype, and even bankruptcies. These are some of the craziest pieces of fiction that came to life. Let's start with the obvious one, President Trump. By now, everyone with an internet connection knows that long before President Trump ran for office, The Simpsons called it. The episode in question, Bart to the Future, aired back in 2000, which is 20 years ago, and makes me feel very old. It shows Bart and Lisa in the future, with Bart being a slacker while Lisa is president of the US. While Lisa is the first female US president in the episode, they do make a reference to her predecessor.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
President Trump may have been elected back in 2016, with 2020 potentially being his last year in office, but it is definitely a line that is extremely relevant in 2020. When asked about the line, writer and consulting producer Dan Greeny couldn't remember who initially pitched it or how it arose, but said how the show embraced American culture and how Trump was a part of that. But we all secretly know they have a time machine or a TARDIS or something in the writing room, but they just refuse to tell us. The show also makes reference to Ivanka Trump running for office, but that isn't till 2028. Of course, we couldn't talk about 2020 without mentioning the pandemic that has ripped across the world. COVID-19. You might have heard about it. COVID-19 continues to wreak havoc on our society and change the way we operate for the foreseeable future. And if you asked anyone last year how they foresaw this year turning out, a lot of people wouldn't have suggested a global pandemic. I was personally looking forward to Disney World, but of course the writers at Simpsons aren't the same as us mere mortals, with them predicting a global pandemic. In the season 4 episode Marge in Chains, the show predicts a global flu spreading across the world called Osaka flu, and it is spread by a Japanese factory worker coughing into a package. The two don't share the same name, or even the same type of virus, and the Osaka flu originated from Japan as opposed to the province of Wuhan, but there are some scary parallels between the two. As Springfield begins to panic, they desperately seek a cure, but in doing so, accidentally set off a chain of events which are also strangely similar to 2020. As the residents of Springfield panic and go into a frenzy, they push over a truck, only to release a horde of killer bees. As you may know, earlier in the year, the Asian giant hornet, otherwise known as the much more sinister name murder hornets, were spotted on the western coast of the United States, triggering a great deal of alarm. Not only does the sighting of murder hornets in the US pose a threat to local wildlife, but let's face it, a creature that is known as a murder hornet is somewhat concerning. The threat seems to have been somewhat contained for now, but with the way 2020 is going, I am definitely sleeping with one eye open. The Simpsons may not have called them murder hornets, but to have killer bees in the same episode as a global pandemic is an ominous coincidence.
I'm cured! Ouch!
In terms of 2020 predictions, the Marge in Chains episode is the gift that keeps on giving. As the title refers, Marge is arrested in the episode for accidentally stealing a bottle of bourbon and spends 30 days in prison. Marge's arrest leads to mass riots across Springfield. While the events are very, very different and the beats in the episode are purely satirical, the mass riots due to a controversial arrest have striking parallels to the Justice riots taking place across not only the US, but the world. If the episode had just featured this arrest, then it may not have been enough to compare it to the riots of 2020. But with the inclusion of a global pandemic and killer bees, the coincidences are just too much to not include. A controversial statue in the episode of Marge in Chains is what leads to the riots, with Springfield Park Commission failing to raise enough money for an Abraham Lincoln statue, and instead going for a statue of Jimmy Carter.
He's history's greatest monster!
In fact, the episode ends with Springfield unveiling a Marge statue.
It's beautiful.
Which is the best statue you could make, but it actually turns out to be the Carter statue with Marge's hair. So pretty close, I guess. But there is another episode that refers to a controversial statue. In the episode The Telltale Head, Bart cuts off the head of the statue commemorating the town's founder, Jebediah Springfield, in an effort to be popular. Bart eventually returns the head and it is reattached to the statue. But for avid Simpsons watchers, you know the character of Jebediah is a controversial one. Lisa uncovers the truth that Jebediah is actually a literal silver-tongued pirate called Hans Sprungfield, who brawled with George Washington before assuming the name Jebediah Springfield, making him an imposter and false icon. However, Lisa decided to keep Springfield's identity as a secret as she noticed the good he brought out of the local residents. And while Bart didn't take down the head of the statue due to political agenda, like the episode Marge in Chains, the taking down of controversial statues is eerily similar to what's happening today on the back of the Justice riots. Another moment of clairvoyance from the Simpsons writers comes in the form of them predicting the fate of department store chain JCPenney's. In a 2006 episode of The Simpsons, we see the family at the mall looking at a desolate and derelict JCPenney's store, which in the episode had completely shut up shop. Flash forward 14 years and news coming out in May that the chain had filed for bankruptcy due to the financial implications of the coronavirus. Although it may not be as shocking of a prediction as it first appears, with the chain reportedly financially struggling for over a decade now, it may have been safe to guess that JCPenney's would close down. It also would be a safe bet that the Simpsons writers sold all their penny stocks. Hey yo.
Don't you have any follow-through on anything?
And that there will be several people on Wall Street calling them up to find out what other stocks they should buy or sell.
$25.
Or does that count as insider trading? Another huge effect of COVID-19 are workers leaving the office and working from remote locations. This means companies are becoming even more reliant on video conferencing, leading to platforms such as Zoom rising in popularity and usage, as well as close-ups of your colleague Suzanne while she repeatedly asks if you can hear her, as her cat meows in the background. But that's a very non-specific example. Anyways, video calling may be a commonplace technology now, with almost everyone having access to it, but it was something yet to be discovered in the 90s. But of course, The Simpsons predicted its rise all the way back in 1995. In the season 6 episode Lisa's Wedding, which flashes forward to Lisa's future, we see Lisa and Marge talking over a picture. Phone, something strikingly similar to Zoom and other video calling platforms. Another thing that episode predicts is World War III, but let's hope that doesn't happen. Another piece of technology that has become ever so popular during 2020 and the global pandemic is the rise of Animal Crossing. With most people stuck inside all day, the sales of Nintendo Switches skyrocketed, with them selling out quickly. I am still waiting to get mine, along with many Nintendo games. But the most prevalent game was by far the life simulation game Animal Crossing. With people unable to go out in the real world, fans took to the virtual world, and the game has been extremely popular since its release. And while The Simpsons may not have predicted the exact rise of Animal Crossing, they did predict the rise of these life simulation games, with an episode in 1998 referring to a game as Yard Work Simulator. Sounds familiar? While virtual gardening and farm games aren't exactly new, with the popularity of Farmville in the early 2010s, it does feel very relevant to today, with Animal Crossing being such a major part of the zeitgeist. But with VR becoming ever more popular, I would be very intrigued to take part in the game of Yard Work Simulator, while my actual yard turns into a mini Mirkwood from The Hobbit. It is safe to say that the last two Star Wars, The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker respectively, have been somewhat controversial amongst its fan base. But one Star Wars outing that has been for the most part universally loved is the Disney Plus original show The Mandalorian, which centers on Pedro Pascal's lone bounty hunter. While recent Star Wars entries in the Star Wars saga, including the prequels, have been accused of moving too far away from its roots, The Mandalorian pays homage to the westerns that inspired the original trilogy, with The Mandalorian centered on a western-style hero in the mold of Clint Eastwood or John Wayne. In particular, the former, who starred in Sergio Leone's masterful Dollars trilogy, a main inspiration for Star Wars. But for cinema aficionados, you would know that in turn, the Dollars trilogy is inspired by samurai culture and the works of Japanese legend auteur Akira Kurosawa. Kurosawa also directly inspired Star Wars, with Lucas taking the main story from Kurosawa's Hidden Fortress as inspiration for A New Hope. The Mandalorian goes back to these roots, and although Lucas isn't the direct creator, his influence is felt in the show. This return was predicted by The Simpsons when Randall Curtis, a parody of Lucas, announces he's going to return to his roots of lifting off samurai and western movies.
I'm going back to my roots. Plots and characters lifted from westerns and samurai films.
While The Mandalorian may have been released in 2019, with a second season underway and more similar Star Wars projects on the horizon, it is still highly relevant in 2020.
What?
To finish up, we end on a 2020 prediction The Simpsons got wrong. Dun dun dun. Well, maybe. In the episode Sunday, Cruddy Sunday, which aired back in 1999, The Simpsons predicted a team in red with jerseys that strongly resemble that of the San Francisco 49ers, winning the Super Bowl in Miami. As sports fans will know, the Niners took on the Kansas City Chiefs this year in Miami for Super Bowl 54. But unfortunately for Niners fans, the result was very different, with the Chiefs edging out the California outfit in the fourth quarter and taking the championship back to Kansas. However, for you astute viewers out there, you will have noticed that the Chiefs also wore red, while the Niners wore white at the Super Bowl. So maybe they did get it right after all.
comedy series, The Simpsons, the show has mysteriously predicted several events before they took place. 19 years ago, an episode of The Simpsons predicted that Donald Trump would one day become US president, and this wasn't the only time the writers have managed to predict the future. Here are 10 times The Simpsons predicted events that haven't happened yet, but still could. Let's get into it. Hover cars. Back in a 2005 episode, Professor Frink invented a machine that allowed Bart and Lisa to see into their future. Marge left Homer because he blew through all their money on an underwater house and spent what he had left over on a hover car. Although the ride is a bit bumpy, it does get them through a quantum tunnel. How close is that vision to coming true? In 2017, Renault created a futuristic-looking concept car called Float that can move in any direction without turning. The same technology is being used in Tesla's Hyperloop train design. Will we see this happen in the near future? Definitely possible.
I'm not done yet. You know that little ball you put on the aerial so you can find your car in the parking lot? That should be on every car.
VR food. Virtual reality has taken over in many aspects of our world. VR is the new technology that allows users to actually experience things in first person. In this episode, The Simpsons make it to the future.
Provide you with a complete virtual reality experience, letting you live in a world of your dreams.
This time to 2030, where Homer and Marge are seen eating virtual fudge via VR glasses and VR feeding tubes. Meanwhile, in the real world, Royal Caribbean is looking into giving their cruise line guests a VR dining experience with every bite of food you are transported to a new setting. And food scientists at Cornell University found that cheese eaten in a pleasant VR setting tasted better.
And when it was time to pick up a new bite to eat...
Is it warm? Oh! The whole room just disappeared.
And with every bite, the room transformed.
Hologram mail. Another look into the future features Bart as he receives the hologram message hiring his brand for a club gig. The letter was signed with the ending, "Smell you later," which replaced the usual goodbye. HD3 holograms, a 3-sided holographic display case, are already available for use in stores and installed in more than 500 Best Buy stores. Could hologram mail be close to reality? Maybe, but one thing is for sure, it won't be cheap.
Here's what you do. From now on, before you say anything, say to yourself, if I was ever sure of anything, I'm sure of this. Do you understand?
Mind-controlling music. Well, this sounds pretty scary, right? But could this be the future? I don't know. But The Simpsons seem to think it may. A 2001 episode of The Simpsons called New Kids on the Blech scared the pants of its viewers. With its plot that had Bart and his pals in a new band that turned out to be a project by the Navy Department, intended to feed children with subliminal messages in their music. Their biggest hit? A song titled Drop the Bomb. Robot Takeover. The Simpsons predicted mass automation in 2012.
Oh, that's what I get for voting for Kanye.
With robots taking over jobs of many humans, which many believe is already happening. But a robot prediction was touched on long before that. In a 1994 episode of Itchy and Scratchy Land, the family visited a theme park manned with robots that go off the rails and take the lives of everybody in sight.
I would have thought that our visit to Itchy and Scratchy Land would turn out to be our best vacation ever.
Yeah, best ever.
Jürgen Schmidhuber, who is known as the father of artificial intelligence,
human-level artificial intelligence that summer, and we didn't, and human-level artificial intelligence has turned out to be a very difficult scientific problem, and it isn't solved yet.
Believes that AI superintelligence will trigger away runaway technological growth and profound changes to civilization in just 30 years. Bigfoot is real. While on a camping trip with his friends, Homer is mistaken for Bigfoot after falling in the mud and is captured by scientists for observation. But it was Bart who encountered the real Sasquatch in 2002 while exiting a bus in Canada. Okay, so maybe we're stretching it a little bit by suggesting that Bigfoot could be real. But then again, maybe we're not. Could The Simpsons be hinting at a future Bigfoot sighting in this episode? Seems like a possibility if you ask me.
Most impressed by the creature's uncivilized look, its foul language, and most of all, its indescribable stench.
Colonization of Mars. I mean, colonizing Mars has been in the talks for many years now. Its planet is the closest environmentally to the planet Earth, and has water and other necessities for survival. It's going to take a lot of work, but this planet could be colonized by human life in the future if needed. In an episode of The Simpsons, Marge is not thrilled when Lisa volunteers for a one-way trip to Mars, so she volunteers to go with her. In fact, Hoping to persuade Lisa into not going on the trip, the whole family signs up. The idea behind Exploration Incorporated's expedition is to colonize the Red Planet before 2026, a date that moves up to, like, the end of the week. The takeoff fails, but Lisa and Marge make it to Mars in 2051, only for Lisa to announce she wants to move to Venus.
A real rocket. It's the outside of a real rocket.
We did plan to build a real rocket.
And that's one thing they can never take away from us.
That plan is our legacy.
While Elon Musk's SpaceX is currently developing Mars-bound cargo flights for as early as 2022, fully colonizing Mars would require an out-of-this-world budget. Large-scale environmental disaster. If you've seen the Simpsons movie, you'd know that its entire plot tackles a massive environmental disaster that most definitely could happen, but fixes it in a very unusual way. In the 2007 film, Homer dumps pig feces in the already dangerously polluted Springfield Lake, causing an environmental crisis. To keep the town's contamination contained, the president encloses Springfield under a giant glass dome. Can the levels of contaminated water happen? Heck yes. And it has many times, but no glass domes yet. Living under a glass dome will be a very scary experience.
Eepa! Trapped forever. It's all come true.
But hey, it could happen one day. Baby translator. During the third season of the show, Homer's brother Herb designs a baby translator. This is something we all need. To be able to understand what your baby is saying would be a blessing and a half for sure. The episode, which goes by the name of Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes, follows the businessman's dream of creating a device that can help grown-ups understand babies. He uses Maggie to test out his new creation, and it translates her babbles as, lavish attention on me and entertain me.
Maggie! Maggie!
Where did you go? Oh, there you are.
In 2015, China introduced a similar idea through a phone app called the Infant Cries Translator, which can help identify if your baby is tired, hungry, or needs changing through the sounds that they make. I think having this in the future could be good and bad, depending on how it's used. But what if your baby says something disturbing? Digitized Big Ben clock. Big Ben, the famous tourist attraction, has popped up on the show a number of times, but interestingly with a digital face instead of its normal traditional analog one. Considering their track record with Assumptions, the idea of Big Ben switching to digital doesn't seem that weird. This is surely a possibility, and honestly seems like one of the most likely predictions to actually happen in the future. I mean, nowadays, many people can't even read analog clocks because of how we've adjusted to digital media and time telling in simple ways. So could this happen?